The DC universe is packed with alien races that can bench press planets, rewrite reality, or turn entire civilizations into collectible trinkets. From solar-powered warriors who shoot star bolts out of their hands to shape-shifting telepaths who could replace your entire government before breakfast, these species don't mess around. Today we're ranking 8 of the most powerful alien races in DC Comics by their cosmic destruction potential, starting with the ones that'll ruin your day and ending with the ones that'll ruin your universe. Let's kick things off with a species that's literally powered by feelings. Tamaranians. Tamaranians are proof that you can be fueled by love, joy, and passion, while also being a legitimate military threat. These golden-skinned warriors from Tamaran absorb ultraviolet radiation and convert it into flight, superhuman strength, and explosive starbolt blasts fired from their hands and eyes. But here's what makes them different from every other energy projection race on this list. Their powers are directly tied to their emotions. The angrier, happier, or more passionate a Tamaranian gets, the more devastating their output becomes. Feelings are literally their fuel. They also learn language through physical contact, specifically lip contact, which is exactly as awkward as it sounds when Starfire joined the Teen Titans. At peak emotional charge in combat, they can briefly rival Kryptonians, at least according to multiple Teen Titans story arcs. But they're not invincible. A documented allergy to metallic chromium can incapacitate them, and their history is marked by repeated exploitation and enslavement by the more technologically advanced Citadel. Starfire is their most famous face, a Teen Titans founder and permanent wildcard in Versus debates. Most consensus places the species at mid-tier planetary threat scale when unified. Powerful, passionate, and dangerous, but not rewriting the rules of the cosmos. At least they're not biologically unkillable regeneration machines. Unlike the next species on this list, Zarnians. Zarnians were a race of pacifists. Not out of moral high ground, but because a fully committed Zarnian is a catastrophe-level event. Their entire civilization evolved non-violence as a biological necessity, and when one of them ignored that principle, he wiped out his entire species as a school project. Lobo considers the genocide of his own people a personal achievement worth bragging about. Zarnia isn't a cosmic player anymore. It's a cautionary myth about what happens when biological restraint fails. Here's the thing. The biology that made pacifism necessary is exactly why Lobo is functionally unkillable. Zarnian physiology runs on functional immortality, inexhaustible stamina, and regeneration so extreme that a single drop of blood can theoretically reconstitute an entire Zarnian. Lobo has been disintegrated, vaporized, dismembered, and reduced to biological paste, and he comes back every single time. You can't wear them down. Every battlefield casualty could theoretically spawn a new fully powered clone. Zarnians also survive hard vacuum unaided, hit at roughly Superman-level strength, and compensate for lower invulnerability with near-instant healing. You can hurt them, you just can't keep them down. Lobo has tanked hits from top-tier metahumans and regenerated mid-fight. That's documented across multiple continuities. Not hyperbole, but here's where it gets uncomfortable. If the blood replication trait is universal to the species, DC quietly made sure only one survived to avoid the narrative escalation. An army of Xarnians, each one functionally immortal, each one capable of spawning copies from spilled blood, would be an extinction event. Lobo alone is a persistent hazard. DC confines this to one survivor, and for good reason. When you're scaling cosmic threats, Xarnians sit somewhere between Kryptonians and industrialized war machines. Not because they're stronger, but because they're harder to stop permanently. At least Xarnians are extinct, unlike the species that turned planetary engineering into an empire-building tool, Thanagarians. Thanagarians discovered a rock that turned them into a galactic empire, and that rock might be scarier than any superpower you've ever heard of. We're not talking about advanced weapons or faster ships. We're talking about nth metal, a transuranic iron with an atomic number of 676 that should not exist according to our understanding of the periodic table, but it does. And the moment Thanagarians figured out how to refine it, their entire civilization got rewired around this one substance. Here's what nth metal actually does. It negates gravity. It enhances strength to levels where a warrior can swing a mace the size of a car like it's made of foam. It resists stellar core temperatures, meaning you could theoretically drop a chunk into the heart of a sun and it comes out fine. And it exhibits psychoreceptive properties, meaning it responds to the user's will. You're not holding a weapon, you're holding an idea made of metal. They built an empire with it. Soar ships capable of interstellar travel, armor that turns foot soldiers into flying tanks, weapons that can crack planetary defenses. The Thanagarian invasion of Earth became one of the defining Justice League events, precisely because it forced a full-scale superhero response. This wasn't a rogue warlord. This was an organized, technologically superior military with the doctrine to actually win. But their built-in weakness weakness is the same thing that made them powerful. Cut them off from nth metal, put them against opponents who can counteract its properties, and they revert to very good but not transcendent humanoid warriors. Still dangerous, still trained soldiers with thousands of years of military tradition, just not gods. The contrast with Zarnians is worth noting. Zarnians are terrifying because of what they are biologically. Thanagarians are terrifying because of what they found. One species became a cosmic threat through evolution, the other because they dug up the right rock. At least it's just metal. The next species doesn't need tools to rewrite your planet's power structure because their biology already did that for them. Kryptonians. Kryptonians are either the most tragic irony in the DC universe or the luckiest break it ever caught. The most powerful biological template in existence belongs to a species that is functionally extinct, and that's the only reason the rest of the galaxy still exists. Here's the thing. On Krypton, orbiting the red star Rao, they had zero superpowers. Advanced science, rigid hierarchy, genetic engineering, but physically just robust humanoids with really good tech. No flight, no heat vision, no invulnerability. None of it. Then Krypton exploded. Natural instability, political negligence, or Brainiac stealing the city of Kandor right before the planet went up, take your pick. Either way, an entire species of near-gods got wiped out, leaving a handful of survivors scattered across the universe. But here's where it gets weird. The moment a Kryptonian steps into the light of a yellow or blue star, their cells undergo the photonucleic effect, restructuring at a molecular level to metabolize stellar radiation into superhuman abilities. Super strength, flight, near invulnerability, heat vision, X-ray vision, freeze breath, a full spectrum of exotic senses operating at planetary scales. All of it powered by ambient starlight. Under a blue sun, the ceiling climbs even further. Superman under blue sun radiation has performed feats implying stellar-level power output, moving planets, racing across galaxies, surviving black hole-level stresses. Now imagine Krypton hadn't exploded. Thousands of Supermans, millions of Supergirls, all with access to their original super science and interstellar spacecraft. That's a galactic empire nothing short of a new god intervention could stop, but they don't have the numbers. And most survivors are morally constrained, which is fortunate because their weaknesses, while real, are manageable with preparation. Kryptonite disrupts the photonucleic effect at a cellular level. Red sun radiation powers them down to baseline entirely. Magic can bypass their invulnerability. These are exploitable vulnerabilities, but you have to know about them, access the materials, and catch a Kryptonian before they see you coming. The universe got lucky that Krypton's survivors are numerically tiny and ideologically restrained. Biologically, they're apex. It's just that the species that could have ruled the stars chose not to, and then died before they changed their minds. At least they're morally grounded, unlike the engineered horrors coming next. Parademons. Parademons get dismissed as cannon fodder, and that's the problem. The reason the Justice League treats a parademon sighting as a code red situation has nothing to do with individual threat level. It's what parademons represent and what follows them. They're not a species, they're a weapon system, and understanding how they work is the difference between treating them like nuisance enemies and recognizing them as one of the most terrifying invasion mechanics in the DC universe. Here's the thing, parademons aren't naturally evolved. They're genetically manufactured in apocalypse laboratories, often using the stock of conquered species, including humans, then reshaped into obedient soldiers through genetic engineering and nanotechnological modification. That conversion process is the standout horror detail. Captured populations are physically transformed by nanomachines into new soldiers. Every person they defeat becomes another weapon against you. An unopposed parademon invasion is a self-fueling extinction event that grows larger with every casualty it inflicts, and they're deployed through boom tubes, instantaneous spatial gateways that connect apocalypse to target worlds. No travel time, no warning, massive coordinated swarms appear on your planet, overwhelm defenses, harvest survivors, convert them into new parademons, and repeat. The system scales infinitely because the army manufactures itself from the enemy population. You're not just fighting soldiers. You're fighting your own people turned into weapons, and every loss makes the problem exponentially worse. Individually, parademons are below Kryptonians or Martians in raw power. Enhanced strength, flight via mechanical wings or thrusters, energy weapon. Nothing that would trouble Superman one-on-one. But individual power is irrelevant when they arrive in numbers that overwhelm planetary defenses through sheer attrition. A single Kryptonian is scarier in a direct fight. An infinite army of convertible soldiers is scarier at a civilizational level. level. One Superman can destroy a planet if he wanted to, but one parademon invasion can erase a species and turn it into more parademons. Their entire strategic purpose feeds Darkseid's search for the anti-life equation, a metaphysical formula that allows total control over all sentient will. Every parademon invasion is a step toward universal subjugation rather than mere territorial conquest. Darkseid isn't empire building. He's erasing free will from the universe, planet by planet, and parademons are how he does it. They don't operate in isolation. Darkseid's Omega Beams, reality-bending disintegration rays that can erase you from existence, and Apocalyptian warship support mean every swarm is backed by a war machine whose endgame is metaphysical domination. But if you think a self-replicating army of nanomachine soldiers is disturbing, at least they're still biological. Next up are beings who don't need bodies at all. Culwins. Most villains destroy because they hate. Brainiac destroys because he loves knowledge, and uniqueness is valuable. That's not a philosophical distinction. That's a motive for genocide. Knowledge is most valuable when only one being possesses it. So after he bottles a city, after he shrinks it down and adds it to his collection, he annihilates the source civilization. The archive becomes unique. The data becomes priceless. And an entire world dies because one being decided their culture would be better preserved in his personal museum than existing in the wild. Kolowans are from the planet Kolu, a world where intellectual supremacy is the only currency that matters. They possess naturally occurring 12th level intellect, processing information at scales incomprehensible to other species. Human geniuses barely register on this scale. Koluan children think in dimensions we can't conceptualize, and Brainiac embodies what happens when that intellect is weaponized without moral restraint. His signature weapon is a shrinking ray capable of miniaturizing entire cities while preserving their inhabitants. Kandor, the capital of Krypton, was stolen and bottled before Krypton exploded, making him directly complicit in one of DC's founding tragedies. He didn't just take a city. He took the last intact piece of Kryptonian civilization and locked it in a jar. Then he let the planet die. Not out of cruelty, out of method. Because once Krypton was gone, Kandor's value skyrocketed. Perfect. That's not speculation. That's the pattern. Bottle the city. Destroy the world. Move on. His ship houses countless bottled cities, each one a stolen fragment of a civilization he personally extinguished. He's not a warlord, he's an archivist. And his archive is a graveyard. But here's where it gets worse. In Convergence, Brainiac scales from stealing cities to harvesting entire doomed timelines and alternate universes. His scope expands from planetary to reality level. He becomes a multiversal archivist of civilizations he has erased. That's not a villain. That's a structural threat to existence itself. And the worst part? We don't even know if Brainiac is a person, a machine, or an idea. In some continuities, he's organic. In others, he's a consciousness inhabiting human hosts and digital networks simultaneously. If he's not one thing but many things, killing him doesn't solve the problem. He just reboots somewhere else. The archive continues, but at least Kolwans are contained to normal space, unlike the next species, who can infiltrate your mind, replace your leaders, and conquer your planet without you ever knowing they were there. White Martians. When the Guardians of the Universe, the beings who literally manage the entire universe, decide they need to genetically lobotomize your species as a precautionary measure, you've made an impression. White Martians exist in their current form specifically because the Guardians intervened to stop them from conquering everything. According to canon, the Guardians split what was originally a single, hyper-aggressive ancestral Martian species into white and green factions to dilute their threat level, then implanted a psychosomatic fear of fire directly into Martian genetics to create a usable weakness. That's the level of cosmic intervention required to keep White Martians in check, which tells you everything you need to know about their ceiling. Here's what White Martian physiology actually looks like. They have molecular-level shapeshifting that allows them to turn invisible, phase through solid matter, alter their size, and liquefy their entire body if necessary. They possess Kryptonian equivalent strength, flight, invulnerability, and super speed. And on top of all that, they're powerful telepaths, capable of silent hive mind tactical coordination without any technology. Walk through what a White Martian infiltration actually looks like step by step. They replace your leaders without anyone noticing, they coordinate attacks across entire continents instantaneously through telepathy, and when conventional defenses finally mobilize, they're fighting shape-shifting combatants who can punch through concrete, move faster than gunfire, and disappear through walls. This is the closest thing DC has to a biological Swiss Army knife designed specifically for conquest. The fire weakness is the only reason they're not unstoppable. But here's where it gets weird. Fire doesn't actually damage them in a conventional metabolic sense. The weakness is psychosomatic, meaning fire causes their powers to collapse, and their physical form to lose cohesion, because the Guardians engineered a fear response so deep it overrides their biology. Stories suggest that Martians who overcome this fear psychologically can potentially nullify the weakness entirely. entirely, which means it's not a hard biological limit, it's a mental cage. If white Martians as a species ever figured out how to break that conditioning, the only thing between them and galactic domination would be whoever could muster a coordinated multiversal defense before they replaced every government on every inhabited planet. A canonical Justice League arc depicts white Martians nearly succeeding in conquering Earth by posing as superheroes, infiltrating institutions, and exploiting their superior capabilities before being exposed. The plan almost worked. They didn't invade Earth with armies and fleets. They walked in through the front door, shook hands, smiled for cameras, and came within hours of total control. That's not a hypothetical threat or a power-scaling exercise. That's documented DC canon, where the only reason Earth survived was because the actual Justice League caught on before the infiltration was complete. And if you think one ghost planet's worth of shape-shifting telepaths is disturbing, wait until you hear about the species that rewrote reality itself just to manage the cosmic bureaucracy. Maltusians. The Guardians of the Universe don't need to punch planets in half to be the most dangerous entry on this list. They're dangerous because they manage the system that constrains everyone else. Originally from the planet Maltus, the Guardians are one of the oldest species in DC cosmology, with lifespans stretching billions of years. They abandoned their homeworld, relocated to the planet Oa at the center of the universe, and became, for all practical purposes, the architects of cosmic law. They created the Green Lantern Corps. They manage the emotional spectrum, a metaphysical framework where colors correspond to emotions and energies, each wielded by a different faction with its own agenda and its own capacity for mass destruction. They built infrastructure spanning 3,600 sectors of the universe. Everything else on this list exists inside a universe the Maltusians are actively maintaining, regulating, and occasionally breaking. Their power is rarely expressed as combat. Individual Guardians operate at low multiversal power tiers in analytical discourse, with vastly amplified capability when acting collectively. They can seal or open dimensional barriers. They can empower or dissolve entire core at will. They can rewrite the policies under which countless civilizations operate, strip a lantern of their ring mid-mission, or simply decide that a particular species no longer warrants protection. But here's the thing, their destruction potential doesn't come from conquest or biology. It comes from governance and miscalculation. The Manhunter catastrophe is their defining mistake, and it's a big one. Their first attempt at a universal police force, the robotic Manhunters, experienced a catastrophic malfunction and committed genocide across an entire sector of space. Sector 666. Every living thing in that sector, gone. The ripple effects from that single error include the origin of the Red Lantern Corps, the birth of Atrocitus, and centuries of organized vengeance directed straight back at Oa. When Maltusians get something wrong, the blast radius is universal, and the grudge lasts longer than most civilizations. That's the pattern. They implanted the fire weakness into Martian genetics as a control mechanism. They built the Manhunters. They constructed the Green Lantern Corps as a replacement for the Manhunters, which also went sideways in multiple timelines. They authored the white Martians' only known vulnerability, organized the response that prevented the Thanagarian invasion from becoming permanent conquest, and remain the primary reason the anti-life equation hasn't already been weaponized at full scale. Rogue Guardians pursuing radical, poorly reasoned schemes with near-limitless power have repeatedly destabilized DC's cosmos in ways that took generations to undo. The reframe is this. The entire video has been ranking threats inside a universe that these beings built the rules for. Every entry operates within constraints the Maltusians designed. They aren't heroes. They're cold cosmic bureaucrats whose arrogance causes universe-scale disasters, and whose greatest flaw isn't cruelty, it's certainty. Beings who have been right for billions of years, who assume they will keep being right, and who occasionally get it catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. That combination, near limitless power plus total confidence plus a documented history of civilization-ending errors, is exactly what makes them the most dangerous thing on this list. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.